Just a little bit of housekeeping. If folks could keep their mics on mute while we go through the presentation. The chat is open, and you can kind of converse or do what you like there. We're going to use slido.com for make sure we don't miss any questions, and then there will be an opportunity to kind of crowdsource and upvote or downvote questions. So when we get to that part of the presentation, we'll make sure that we can do that. If we don't get to every question, we'll have some instructions at the end about how we will communicate that back to all of you all. But again, just really excited that you all are here. Let's keep moving. So in this, there's three things that we're hoping to cover today. So hopefully we are able to do all of that, but I really want to talk about the COVID shift. We'll, again, as we mentioned, have an opportunity. You will have a lot of questions, and so we want to begin to answer that, and then try to develop a feedback loop. So figure out how we can communicate to you all, in this virtual environment, as you all are going to begin to do the things with your organizations and things along that line. And then how do we create, again, a feedback loop of if something's not working, how do we go ahead and get that to work, to change that if possible, if we can change something. So just the thing is for perspective, notice that the stiffest tree is most easily cracked while the bamboo or willow survives by bending with the wind. And so with that, we just want to keep that in mind of as we head into pretty uncertain times, and we want to try to make sure that we have some flexibility as we kind of try to navigate this fall opening together. So we're your hosts today, and so I see a lot of guys. It was not on purpose, just the roles that we play. And so in that, I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves and kind of share what role they'll be sharing with, the expertise that they'll be sharing with us today.
Hi, everyone. My name's Evan Heiser. I'm the director of WMU Signature. Our office also runs the Experience WMU platform.
Hey everybody, my name is Andre Rattray. I'm the Assistant Director of Club Sports and Esports. I work over in the Student Recreation Center.
And I'm Chris Sly. I'm the Director for the Office of Student Engagement. Part of the oversight is all of student organizations, including Fraternity Sorority Life, campus programming, student media group. There are areas that we do some leadership development, homecoming, Bronco Bash, different things like that.
Hi everybody, Paul Terzino here. I'm the director of the Bernhardt Center, and I work with a great group of folks to make sure that the BC is well kept, it's clean and comfortable, that we work with you all to manage your events and help you with some event planning. We also manage outdoor space reservations, which will probably be increasing significantly this year. So that's kind of what we do at the BC.
And also we have Brad Kosiba and Kat March from the Office of Student Engagement. They're going to be kind of moderators for the chat, and so you may see them pop in with some comments and things like that. So thanks to Brad and Kat for helping us out with that. And then Andre, again, you can go ahead and post it again, Andre, just in case for folks that haven't come in just yet or missed it the first time. But we're going to be taking questions through slido.com, and you can upvote those for the ones that you oh yeah, I want to hear about that too. So we'll try to get to as many as we can when we get to that section. So, all right, we're going to keep moving. So with that, I want to hear a little bit from you all. I'm going to stop sharing. So I want to do some polling, get a couple of thoughts, feedback on about, as you all begin to re-enter and come back onto campus or come back into school life, what does that look like for you all? And so I'm going to launch the first question here. Go ahead and fill it out. It's anonymous, so I won't see who's saying what, but a couple more seconds. 47 of 55 have voted. All right, I will end the poll and share the results. Hopefully you all can see that. Can I see some thumbs up if you can see the results? Excellent. All right. So in that, the top vote getter is, but by a slim margin, is totally comfortable with being back on campus. And so in that, there is a little bit of a spread. And so as you all are planning different events and meetings and things like that, we'll come back to that, but kind of keep that in mind as well, is that obviously this isn't a tried and true statistically significant poll, but it's just a good kind of straw poll sense to see what's going on. So we have this one plus one more. So here's a new one. And so in that, in terms of what your classes are, what is your class makeup? And I'm gonna end the poll and share the results. Again, can you help me out with some thumbs up if you can see the results? I want to make sure I'm doing it right. Excellent, thank you. So as you can see there, pretty clear majority here that all of the classes are online, and then there's 36% of folks saying, yeah, about half of my classes are online. So there is a little bit of a hybrid feel on that. And then the last poll is really, yeah, as you can see, is where will you physically be at? Will you be in Kalamazoo? Will you be at not in Kalamazoo? Will you be back and forth? Not sure. So yeah, 87% of folks will be spending the majority of their time in the Kalamazoo area. And so it's a pretty clear majority on that in terms of folks are looking to get to Kalamazoo. But obviously if we look, consider the other polls, there's a little bit of variance in terms of, where they will be on campus per se in terms of classes, and then the comfort level, still trying to get that sorted out of what their comfort level is about physically being on campus. So again, keep all of that in mind as we continue on with our conversation. So I'm going to go back to the formal presentation.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you. I'll tell you, it's been a long summer. I haven't seen students since March, so it's just to even see you on a grid on the screen is really great. So I'm glad you're all here. I just want to talk a bit about kind of what shifted. Some of this may not be new to many of you, but I just want to go over and tell you kind of what it means as far as life at Western, as far as events we can have and can't have. As you know, there's been a number of significant state guidelines that have it affected how many people can gather both indoor and outdoor. Right now, 100, and it could change, any day, but right now 100 people or less can gather in outdoor gatherings. So that's kind of the limit for outdoor stuff. Indoors, the limit is 10, which is a very small number, obviously. These are for social and gatherings and events. Now, when you go back to school and you have your classes, you may find that you're going to be in a class of up to 70 people. So there is some leeway that's been given to universities when we learned that there is an exception for instruction and education in an academic facility. We dug a little deeper in that to see, well, what could there be as far as something like the Bernhardt Center? And we found out that if there's an event in the BC that is educational in nature or instructive, then we can have up to 50 people. So there will be opportunities potentially to have something, a gathering as much as 50. Now keep in mind, we're going to stay socially distant. So every room that's set up in the BC will have at least 6 feet between folks and at least a 6 feet perimeter. And that's going to really limit the size of the events we're going to have in our meeting rooms. The small and medium-sized meeting rooms will have between 10 and 30, depending on how we set it up. And the only flexibility we're going to really have is in the ballrooms. That we can get to 50. We can talk later about some of the guidelines because there's a section on here. We're going to talk about guidelines. I can talk more about our guidelines as far as meetings. But we had done a lot of work to create guidelines for both outdoor and indoors to really keep folks as safe as we can, both you all, the students, and those of us who manage our facilities. One thing I think the next slide, Chris is going to talk about, we are asking you to think about a philosophy as far as how you think about events. So Chris, if you take the next slide, I think.
When you all are thinking about planning your events, the first thing that we want is, if you can gather virtually, we want to encourage you to do so. So that's things like this. this meeting we can do virtually. It works really, really well. In some ways, it works better, especially right now. Some of you are in Kalamazoo, some of you aren't. So we've actually been able to get a lot of people here who wouldn't have been able to come. You know, we're over 50, so right there, we would be maxing out on any space. It's also in thinking about the comfort level. So I was really pleased to see that a lot of you are planning, actually the vast majority of you are planning to spend most of your time in Kalamazoo. That's exciting that everyone's coming back. But on that first question, the comfort level is kind of all over. There's some people who kind of aren't even sure what their comfort level is. And that's going to be an evolving thing. So that's one of the reasons why we want to kind of promote to gather virtually, if at all possible, just so that you can really be mindful of where all of your friends, where all of your student organization members are with their own comfort, especially at the beginning, starting virtually while everyone is figuring out. There's some people who have been really, really good about staying in their house the entire time. This is going to be some of the first times that they're kind of going back out. They may not be sure what's doing. Michigan has been doing a pretty good job. Some people are coming from states that have not been as fortunate as and have a lot higher caseload. So these are just kind of all things to think about. So while there's kind of the very hard limits of, you know, we can only allow so many people, even some of those smaller gatherings, just being mindful, think about. So those things that you can't gather virtually, we do want to encourage you to meet outside. So that not only gives you a larger number, you can have up to 100 students and 100 people at one of those larger gatherings, but it also, the social distancing is just so much easier. You aren't worrying about where people are coming in, bottlenecks at doors. Everyone can be out, everyone can be safe. Again, think about the comfort level. It's a lot easier to have people comfortable and then enjoy your event than if everyone's worried going, I don't know how to do it. And then those that you can't gather, you can't do outside, they have to be out inside. This is where you really do need to think about the different responsibility, and there's going to be more restrictions on those. So not everything, even if you go, yep, we're okay with it, is even going to be able to. So that's where we want all of you kind of primarily thinking virtually if possible, then outside, and then kind of that last one, indoors. Even that indoor ones, if you have an in-person event, I would highly recommend that you still give a virtual option. So that might mean setting the laptop up in the back of the room so that those people who are a little bit nervous, not sure if they want to attend, they can still participate in your meetings. They can still be part of the organization, even if they're not able to be there in person because of either comfort level, or there's some of you that responded going, you're not going to be back in Kalamazoo at all. A lot of you have the majority of your classes or all of your classes online. So that's going to be reality for a lot of students, especially some of our first-year students and new students. The university's done a good job to try to make sure that as few of them have all online classes, but those that don't have the strong social networks at Kalamazoo may not be coming. So as you're thinking about first-year students, especially, giving a virtual option is a great way to make sure that they're included, even if they're not here in person.
Okay, so we're kind of at the midpoint of our presentation. Again, we knew that there'd be a lot of questions. We've already been starting to receive a lot of them, and so what you see is a word cloud based off of real questions that we've received, so they're not just made up. And so this is where we're gonna throw it over to Andre, and he's gonna kind of, actually no, before that, each of us, so Paul is gonna kind of cover some of the bigger things that pertain to the BC and kind of go from there. So
yeah, let me just jump in and cover a couple of the pertinent things about coming back and using space in the Bernhardt Center. Some of the, I can't cover them all, but some of the main things we've got to remember, one that I think you all know, it'll be a campus-wide policies to make sure you wear a face covering if you're able. If you haven't yet, please look at the university's face covering policy. If you Google WMU face policy, it'll be like the second hit. So, and maybe I can get the link and I'll put it up there as well. So make sure you read that carefully. It's a new policy, very important. As we've been doing the last couple of years, we're trying to get students or RSOs to make requests online. And you've been trying to do that. Right now, the online request is not working yet, but we're going to open that up and allow you to start requesting space online. We're still kind of finalizing some of our guidelines, but we're pretty close now. As I mentioned, the capacities are going to be much lower. We're going to preset most of our meeting rooms with a variety of theater style and classroom and open square to give some variety. But once we set those, we're very seldom going to change those, and this is for a couple of reasons. Number one, we need to spend time cleaning and sanitizing between each meeting. So we need it. If there's less to move around, we can do that faster. And secondly, we've got staff that are going to be in there touching a lot of things. So if we can minimize their risk to exposure, we're going to do that. And by keeping things the way they are, that's one way to do that. We're going to limit our max time to have a meeting in the BC to 2 hours now. It used to be 3. We've been pretty flexible with that. We're going to try to keep it at 2 to help both get into rooms and clean them and then get as many meetings in as we can. As I mentioned, we'll clean between meetings, and at the end of the night, we're going to be cleaning again one more time just to wipe down touch points, chairs, you know, AV equipment, etc. Our hours are going to shift a bit. We're going to be closing at 10 o'clock every night instead of 12. Part of that reason is to get in and be able to spend some time cleaning the surfaces. You will see a lot of signage. You probably, if you've been on campus lately, you're going to start seeing some university-created signage and messaging, and you'll see a lot of that both if you're in the residence hall there, and also in the Bernhardt Center in your academic spaces. So you'll just to remind you to wear your mask and be socially distant and things like that. Evan talked about virtual meetings. Obviously, you can use a laptop. We're not buying a whole lot yet because it's expensive and see how it works, but we're buying some equipment that'll help you have a higher quality virtual meeting. It takes a bit. A lot of that stuff is on back order, but as soon as we can get some equipment in to help you have a more productive and effective meeting, we're going to do that so that, again, you can be as inclusive as possible. If somebody's not comfortable being in a meeting, at least they can join from a distance. So that's kind of some things at the higher level things I want to cover. If we get more questions, we can cover more stuff. But outdoor too. So again, as I mentioned, we manage outdoor spaces. Outdoor, kind of similar. If you reserve an outdoor space, we want to make sure that you think of ways to keep people 6 feet apart. If you can't be 6 feet apart, you have to wear masks, and that's that's part of the face mask policy. If you're outside, inside always a mask. We're creating some signs, some A-frames that we like to check out, take with you, that has some of those guidelines to just remind people when they're at your outdoor event about these things. When an event is ended, we want you to kind of disperse folks as quickly as you can so we can get folks no more socializing and lower the risk of transmission. So those are some of the things we're going to do outdoors as well.
So from the RSO perspective, and from our office, we're having some conversations with the Western Student Association to see if some of those costs might be able to be lowered. And so one of that would be in terms of outdoor events. And so in that might mean, in a typical situation, is having to reserve that tent or stage, you know, per event. We were trying to see if we can work something out and do like a bulk buy or partner with academics, or that way that cost won't go down to the directly to the RSO. That would have been covered through allocations anyway. And so trying to see if we can, again, eliminate some of that red tape and have that covered at the allocations level. So there will be allocations, monies available. You'll want to make sure, obviously, that you're following the guidelines. So if you have an event that's going to be inside and your anticipated attendance is 200, you're not going to be able to move forward from the allocation side of that perspective. So you need to make sure that you're following the guidelines and things like that. But there will be dollars available for events. What I really like, and I hope this doesn't sound too corny, but what I really do like about students as Broncos is that the creativity and the ingenuity that you all come up with. So I'm anticipating, and probably looking forward to just some really creative ways for how you all will present, virtually engage and connect with each other, different things like that. So I've already heard little bits and pieces, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting. And so we definitely need that, as Evan had talked about, of, you know, there may be some people not as comfortable coming to campus or don't have that support network. And so you all are pretty solid with your Instagram and your social media and stuff like that. And so it's going to take first years a little bit longer though to catch that. So so anyways, yeah, just know that there is going to be some financial support available in that. Some of those details still need to be worked out, but that's kind of the highlight that I want to add there. So I'll throw it over to Andre. Anything in terms of what sports clubs might look like in terms of, I know that there's some big announcements coming up over the last couple, 3 to 4 days, but anything that you want to share in that world?
Yeah, just like everybody else is saying, we've been, following what's been going on with with what the governor's mandates are, as well as, college NCAA sports and MHSA. So right now the clubs, some of the clubs are planning to do their gatherings as like conditioning or skill development sessions. They're going to be non-contact. And each club is, they're going to have a little bit more of an individualized plan based on, how their sport is ran. As we get closer to the year, you will be able to, if you have any questions, you can, go directly to those club leaders and figure out exactly like when and where and how they will be practicing.
I'll do the next. Kind of for anyone who's wondering, WMU signature events, those will still be going on. Any of you, any of the RSOs as well as departments can still host. We will still be doing attendance, probably much less card swipe. Those of you who kind of did the attendance just via the link, that is probably going to be one of the primary way. So a lot less card swipe for signature related events, as well as we're really trying to make sure that Experience WMU is a central place for all these virtual things. So they were the company that provides that platform was great. They added a spot for virtual links. So meetings and all of that, the link can be right in one spot. And the benefit of using this is, think about first year students who don't know what Instagrams to follow, what hashtags to follow. There's one spot, it's in GoWMU. We've been advertising it was part of orientation. All of your clubs are already registered there. So everyone can submit events. And then there's one place where they can kind of go in and find stuff and actually find the link for all of these virtual events. So that's a really big way. It then also, we can easily tag them for those that are signature, and you can take attendance all in the same spot. So kind of one spot where all the virtual side of this can be supported rather than every group doing different things. I did notice in there was questions about kind of what was the platforms that is. Based on we did a bunch of virtual community sessions earlier this summer. Thank you to everyone who participated in those. We are just shy of 300 of those were offered. But the primary one that students put in was Zoom. So Zoom was a really big one. Towards the end, we saw a lot more Teams actually starting to be. So Teams seems to be one that, as students are finding out more, Teams are going. That's a big one. There isn't the time limit, as well as there's a lot of people. WebEx is also provided. Experience WMU allows you to use any of these platforms. So it's really talk with your group and find out what is kind of their preference, and recognize they may shift, especially as all of those online platforms are updating their stuff constantly right now. So what's working really well one week may not work the next week, or someone else puts out a new feature. So be a little flexible with those and adjust, especially as people get into classes. Faculty are doing one thing, people may go, I really like this. So kind of go along with the flow of your student organization.
Cool. So again, that was kind of some of the higher level types of things that we wanted to, again, like I said, you all have a lot of questions, which is great. We want to keep that going and trying to figure that out. So Andre, I'll kind of turn it over to you to see if we can get to some of the top voted Slido questions, and you can kind of serve as our moderator and just kind of throw them out.
Yeah. Real quickly, I'm going to bounce this back to you, Chris. Can you talk a little bit about Bronco Bash and give that update?
Excellent. Yeah, definitely can talk about that. And so Brad's on the call, and so that's his primary responsibility. So Brad, if you don't mind chiming in and giving a little update on or the virtual version of Bronco Bash.
Yeah. So hello, everyone. So Bronco Bash, the in-person event is not happening, but we are transitioning over to a virtual version called Virtual Bash, which will actually happen 2 times this academic year, once on October 8th and the second time on January 13th. So while we can't have our traditional massive event that everyone looks forward to, we are going to go give people 2 chances to engage with RSOs and the local community. We are not live in terms of our registration applications just yet. We are pushing forward and hope to have that out sometime next week. And then once that is live, we will be sending out a barrage of communications via social media, our website, and RSO emails to let you know where you can sign up.
Thanks, Brad. So this question, I believe they're just kind of talking about like the process here. So what should RSOs do to hold outdoor events?
There is I'll throw a link out to y'all. The link to, there was a website that we've always used to register outdoor events, and it's on the Bernhardt Center page, which is wsd.edu/student center/outdoor-reservation. But again, I'll put a link here in a second. And it's the same form we've used. It just has all the guidelines that we now have. So you got to really scroll down and read everything, and you'll get to a registration page. You can request an event. So it's a pretty simple process. And let me get to the chat, and I'll put it on there. So there's a link to the outdoor reservation process. And those come directly to our office. We if we have any questions, we'll contact the sponsor, and then we just let you know when it's been approved.
Hey, Paul, can you talk a little bit about the importance of why a student organization should register event and go through this process for an outdoor space?
Sure. Well, there are a number of things. It depends. The events can be large and small, and depending on the size of the event, we have to provide certain services, whether it be trash removal or whatever, or making sure there's access to certain facilities for you. With COVID, it's even more important. We have to make sure we monitor the size of the event. We want to make sure we get information to you that is pertinent to maintaining as safe an environment as possible. It allows us to have a dialogue with the sponsor, just like in the Bernhardt Center. So if there's any questions we have about your event, we can certainly contact you and talk to you about that. That's a great question.
Thanks, Paul. And then, so Chris, this one I think would be for you. Are there any policies that are in place for RSOs who want to hold off-campus events?
Are there any policies for off-campus events? No, there's not. We want to make sure that RSOs understand that to be a registered student organization, in that approval process, you agree to follow, state, federal, local guidelines and things like that. So, if you're at a third-party vendor or building, they should be following the state guidelines, mandates, different things like that. And then if you happen to just be outside, at a park or something like that, that might not be as closely watched, but again, there's probably a reservation process for that space as well. And you don't want to create something off campus that can't really be managed. Plus, again, in terms of access, and then being able to engage and connect with your audience, you want to be careful about that as well.
I think I will, if I can add on to that as well, some of the things that we're talking about with our clubs, a lot of our clubs practice off campus as well. Also understand that the guidelines that we have that you use in a different facility could be a little bit stricter than what we have on campus. And just be aware that you have to, if you're going on there, you're not going to be able to say, well, at Western, we're allowed to do this or do that. You have to follow those guidelines there as well.
And I think, again, the national narrative, is that, young people or college students really aren't taking this serious. They're, even I'm not sure if you've heard about COVID parties and people are putting into a pot or something like that. So, there's this national narrative that people aren't taking it very serious. And so in that, again, your all's voices were shared in that poll of that, again, there's a spread of not everybody's comfortable with it. And so in that, then it shows me that people are taking it serious. And so, in terms of the Western in our community. And so hopefully we're continuing to do that, whether we're on campus or off campus, that obviously the Corona doesn't have you got to cross the street, darn it, I can't get you. So it obviously is going to continue. Oh, that was cornier. It was better in my head. But anyways, thanks, Paul. Thanks for the support on that. But in that, again, you all do some amazing work. And so again, yes, if it logistically is a little bit easier for you to go off campus, we're not going to get in the way of that. But again, we want you to still be safe. So.
Another question that we have, and I believe this may be for Paul. So for in-person meetings, will they need to provide extra masks or hand sanitizer or other PPE products for their events?
No, every student will get 2 masks right out of the gate. So you should be able to have a mask with you, and every student should. Although we're going to have extra masks at the information desk. So if you forget yours, whatever, we're happy to give you one of those kind of portable or blue ones you see people wear. So we'll have some masks for you at the information desk. we ask you to bring yours, but we'll have some extra in case. We will also have lots of opportunities to use hand sanitizer throughout the Bernhardt Center. We'll try to get one per room, but we'll certainly be several stations on each floor where you can get a sanitizing wipe or some hand sanitizer. So there'll be opportunities for that as well.
So I apologize, I'm not 100% sure who this question should go to and what they're asking about, but the question is, how will we be conducting weekly meetings? Whew.
I think that's up to the organizer, but we will help you best we can to conduct those within the parameters of COVID and so forth.
This is some of those smaller groups may be able to meet in person in different spaces. We are recommending, again, do a virtual meeting, set up. So university, everyone has access to WebEx as well as Teams through your WMISH account. So those are tools that you have available to you. I know a lot of student organizations have been meeting. They've been doing the same stuff, and it's in some ways has helped them to keep their organization going in the summer more than we have in previous years. Because rather than saying only those in Kalamazoo are meeting, kind of keep going. So we really encourage like those weekly meetings. Virtual is a great place. Those that have small ones, you may be able to actually get a in-person space and go through the same reservation process as you would before. Just remember, there's going to be more restrictions on all of those things.
Yeah, the virtual is really going to help you expand your meetings. You can have 5 or 6 in the BC and 20 or 30, elsewhere. So really got to take advantage of that opportunity.
So will the SOC conference room be open and available for RSO meetings?
Yeah, I'm going to throw that one back to Brad because he just had I know Paul, you were there too, but Brad, if you don't mind taking that one.
Yeah, so Paul and I met with the safety manager as well as Connor Kirkpatrick of the Bernhardt Center, and we are definitely making changes to make it more social distance friendly and safe in the era of COVID. And with that, we will be shutting down the conference room because it is just a small space where that 6 feet isn't really possible for more than just 2 people in that room. So that will be used to store some of that common area furniture that we are going to be removing to keep that area safe. Very safe.
Brad, just about the SOC, can you talk a bit about access? Because I think we're not going to have it open per se. You'll have to have your Bronco ID and have access to the room. Is that right?
Yeah, so we are going to be restricting access a little bit for this year. Again, our main priority is to keep you all safe. Whereas in previous years, each RSO would have up to 10 members having swipe access. We're going to reduce that down to 5. And the SOC conference room or the SOC in itself will be locked at all times, and you'll have to have your card on you to get in. Again, I know that's frustrating. It's not ideal, but our main priority is to keep you all safe and to keep that 6 feet and that air clean.
Thanks, Brad. So for off-campus volunteer events, if they're typically held in person, are they still able to participate in those? Do they need approval to hold them, I guess, on and off campus?
Yeah, I would work with the sponsoring organization. So if it's Big Brothers Big Sisters or a hospital or a mission or a food pantry or anything like that, they're probably going to, again, everybody's going to be following the state guidelines or should be. And so you'll probably be working with them in that capacity. I think it's the question is about outside too. So in that again, you just want your folks to be smart. So, everybody should bring a mask just in case it can't keep 6 feet distance outside. And then, just work with the organizer that you're doing the event with.
Thanks, Chris. Next question about the Bernhardt Center. Will tabling and fundraising be allowed in the building?
No, tabling will not be allowed in the building. That really encourages gathering and is really, and I did a lot of research. I checked with a lot of student centers across the country. There's some forums I belong to and I talked to our MAC colleagues, and I haven't found one yet is allowing indoor tabling. Now we'll allow tabling outside at the flagpoles, but again, we're going to have to adhere to some of those social distancing rules, or all of them. But yeah, tabling it's just something we just can't do this fall, just for the safety of you and others.
Thank you, Paul. In regards to meetings, will lecture halls or other academic spaces be available for students to hold meetings?
That's, Chris, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think that's still up in the air. It was pre-COVID. It's a little bit difficult to get in the buildings and spaces for RSOs, and so I'm not sure if that's going to get any easier per se in terms of hours when the building will be open. We're going to see that. There's some buildings on campus that are being hibernated as well. So there's some of that, which I don't have that off the top of my head, but there's some buildings that are being hibernated, and then they might be closing things down for cleaning and stuff like that. So that is a question that we are exploring. We have had conversation about, but we just haven't landed on it yet.
We'll find out.
Yeah.
But I mean, keep in mind, when a classroom is used, custodial services wants to get in and clean it, sanitize it after a use. I don't know if it's every single one, but adding more use by RSOs may create more need for that service. Not that we can't do that, but that probably would be one thing that registrars are going to think about as far as deciding to what extent RSOs can have access to academic spaces. But we'll find out for you, and we'll post some information on one of our websites or both.
It's also one of those, even if it's allowed, you have to remember so many of our spaces have been either reduced way in capacity, and some classes have been moved to some of those bigger meeting spaces. So there's just a lot more demand from classes and stuff for some of those spaces that typically only the biggest classes used to go into. Now classes, think about those up to 70 now need a much bigger space. So it's no longer just a room that holds 70. It's now those biggest spaces on campus that are only going to have 70 students. So classrooms are going to have a lot more demand from the academics. So even if it's allowed, being able to get anything in there, they've been struggling to just find enough spaces to fit all the academic classes in. And then anything additional is going to be hard. So that's where we're really thinking, be creative with how you're planning your events and how you're doing things.
One question that we have is, how will the limits be regulated within the spaces? The capacity limitations, how will that be regulated by the university?
I can speak for the BC. Certainly, when we work with event organizers, we'll ask them what they expect the capacity, and they'll tell us. And we have student employees that work for us at night, student managers, and they'll check. They're not going to be police and try to be heavy-handed, but if a group is consistently going over their limit, then there could be consequences as far as not being able to use the BC for a certain amount of time. But so we'll have to monitor that. I really don't. I'm hoping that won't be a problem. And that our RSOs really work well with us. We'll just have to watch it very carefully and be really careful, because again, it's a safety issue for us. So it's going to be important for us to monitor, us being both the full-time staff and our student staff at night.
Another question that they have is, do they need to keep track of attendance for outdoor events?
No, I forget the exact guidelines on that. I think we have something in the outdoor event. I don't think, I think it's encouraged for tracing, but I'm gonna have to defer. I don't remember the policy exactly on that. So I think it's on the outdoor reservation request that I sent, to take a look at that, and there might be a requirement to do that, or at least a request to try to do that.
I will say, we provided tools, so anyone has the ability to do the attendance just like we did, with as simple as a link. You can use the check-in stuff. It is always a good idea to take attendance. So even if it's not a policy, taking attendance is a good idea. Then you know who's there, especially if something comes and we do need to do the contact tracing. That'll help us. Anything we can do to help the university, if there is something that happens, we'll just make it so that we can keep functioning as an institution as long as we possibly can. So attendance is one of those little things where it can help even for one of those events, especially as those big events. That's where, what we've seen in the national news is those big events turn into some of those spreader events. And that's where if we can do some contact tracing quickly, that'll really benefit the university. So we've got the tools where you can all take attendance. So even those that you may go, we don't have to, would really encourage you to do so. Even if you don't get 100% of everyone who's there, getting a good number, it gives you an idea of who's coming to your stuff too.
And I will, if I go back, I'm reading the policy. Let me just read it. The following guidelines should help in decision-making of any request for campus space. One of them is the ability of the group organizer to identify persons attending the gathering for possible contact tracing. So yes, we do ask you to try to do all you can to keep track of who's at your events, both inside and out.
Thank you. There's a couple more questions, and next question would be, is there any limitation to how many meetings an RSO can have in the Bernhardt Center per week?
We've always been one per week, so that's been our limit to help make sure everybody gets a chance to have an event. So one regular weekly meeting, and then you can do a program as well. That's not a regular weekly meeting.
And then basically the last question that I see here is, how will they be updated when things change?
Communication obviously is very important at times like this. So we will keep our website updated, the wh.edu/student center, and we'll try to use social media as best as we can as well. We have a new grad assistant, Mel Dunn, who just started this week, and one of her tasks will be to help keep our social media up. So we'll use social media and our webpage. Chris, do you want to kind of address that as well?
Yeah, well, our social media has been pretty strong, and so we'll definitely lean on that to kind of link things to various websites and stuff like that. We have Kat, do you want to chime in on the RSO newsletter and then the kind of mailing all function? There's an email function. I'll let you jump in on that.
Sure. So the RSO newsletter, which goes out to all the leaders of RSOs who have registered via Experience WMU, includes all of the information announcements out of our office and our campus partners. And we're switching from a monthly newsletter to a bi-weekly newsletter, which means that if there's new updates, new news, it's going to get to you all a lot faster.
We obviously want to partner with that, and so that's kind of how we'll plan to kind of put things out. But please don't scroll through it. The RSO newsletter takes maybe 3 or 5 minutes to kind of get through it, and if there's something that doesn't pertain to you, you can skip to the next part and be like, oh, that's a part that I do want to focus on. So it's a really good, clean layout, and so hopefully that's one of a good tool that will be effective for you all as well.
What are the food guidelines for indoor meetings?
We haven't landed at 100%, but we're really leaning towards no food, because again, that creates one more touch point. There will be opportunities to go down and get a Subway or something at the BC Caf or Big B, so they'll be open. Subway and Big B open on the 24th of August, and Burger Brothers not sure yet. So we're really encourage people to go out and get something, take a break, and go down and get something downstairs.
What is your view on fraternities and sororities who typically hold larger gatherings? Do you have any best practices for them?
Yeah, we've been in our office, Abby Wallace and Colleen, the grad with Fraternity Sorority Life, has been having a lot of conversations. And so just to kind of hopefully clear up some misnomers of the Interfraternity Council, they're the ones that are typically known for throwing parties, and we've partnered with them, and they are going to come on record and say that they're not going to host any parties through the fall. And so they understand that that can be a very large gathering space, and so we're very excited about that. The majority, if not all, of our sorority houses and Fraternity Village Drive are dry, and so they wouldn't, even pre-COVID, would not really be responsible for hosting parties. And so, and then for our culturally based organizations, their facilities are a little bit smaller in terms of maybe it's a townhouse or something like that. And so we would want them to encourage to be careful about, hosting a party in basically a living room. And so we want to be careful about that as well. But in terms of the larger gatherings, the Fraternity Sorority Life communities really come together and again, want to partner in this and trying to, whether it's flatten the curve, bend it, break it, whatever. It was really good to have the students step up and partner with us in that.
So a follow-up question to in regards to Bronco Bash is why is it so late?
Yeah, it's, in all honesty, it's just due to the impact of the pandemic. So the university was hit pretty hard over the summer, and our team felt that. And so we thought it was best in order to, and, transitioning an event that has, 15,000 plus attendees and close to 500 booths, transitioning that from an in-person event into an online space is no easy task. So we just needed a little bit more time to make that happen for y'all. It is not, again, it's not a perfect solution and it's not the perfect timeline, but we are doing the best we can to innovate during this pandemic. So we definitely appreciate your patience and understanding with that.
Paul, I think this question would be for you, kind of in regards to that food, but what about distributing RSO material or other giveaways at events or prepackaged food?
Yeah, we're going to finalize the food thing. Prepackaged still, there's a risk of spreading, so we've got to be careful about that, and we'll dial that in and make sure we have a very specific policy that the next week or so. Distributing materials, you got to use the best sense you can. If you can, collect it, put it in a box, and try not to touch it, and let the members grab it on their own as best you can. I would encourage sharing materials electronically. That's what I would do, and using our technology to put your agenda on the screen, on a projector, and doing all you can to limit those touch points within your meeting.
And do you guys have, or anybody can speak on this, any expectations or thoughts about what to expect for the spring semester?
My face hopefully told you a little bit. I haven't heard much on spring. So no, from what I've heard. So I don't know if others want to chime in, but I haven't heard much on spring yet.
I think it's right now, no one knows. It's all how we as a campus community, a state, a country can kind of come together and either control this or not. If this gets way out of hand, it goes the opposite. If we can get a control, if we all take this seriously, kind of do these small meetings, do these virtual meetings up front, hopefully by spring, some of these policies will be relaxed. We've seen some of them already been relaxed a little bit. The outdoor policies were much stricter. They're getting slowly more relaxed. Hopefully the state does that, and then Western can follow some of that guideline. So it really is going to, I think, come down to how well we as a community can kind of follow the guidelines and keep this under control. So hopefully we have a more normal spring.
It's Evan. And then the last question I think we have is, as RSOs, what will be their involvement with Fall Welcome for new students?
I believe Fall Welcome has done outreach to a number of groups. I don't know if the RSOs were involved. The RSOs, we did try to actually involve you all with orientation. So you all were able to sign up for those virtual community sessions. You can keep offering some of those types of things. You can post meetings and experience WMU. There's a couple groups that are still going on with those, and students are still going in. We're actually Experience WMU is about, has seen 40% more students this year as compared to last year. So you can keep posting, and I think a lot of new students are just finding out about that because they are having to finish up orientation in just the next couple days. So Fall Welcome, I believe, has most of their schedule. They are trying to figure out very similar things as all of us. So they've gotten most of their communication out already.
I just got a text from Taylor West, WSA president. Thank you, Taylor. She's saying, and I agree, is that there are how-to sessions. So that was part of their programming pre-COVID in previous years. And so if RSOs are looking to kind of engage with Fall Welcome and kind of share with what opportunities there are for students, first-year incoming students, to be a part of, the how-to sessions is a really good way to do that. And so if Taylor or maybe Kat, if you're able to put something in the chat about a contact information or a website link where maybe people can register, that would be great. Excellent, Andre, thank you so much for that. We're gonna move on to the next part of our presentation. And then again, if there are questions, keep putting them in there, and then we'll talk about a plan for how we can get back to you all. So on the feedback part, there's been some really good conversation, good questions. I know I've been able to kind of get a sense for where you all are at in terms of the nature of the questions and things like that. So I might go in a slightly different direction with this one, but in that we as Paul had mentioned, that, you know, if it's really social in nature, the state of Michigan is saying we only can have 10. If we are able to move into more of an educational type of thing, we can move up to 50. And so want to see, again, with that polling, there is a spread of comfort level. And so is this something that you all are kind of like interested in, is trying to get more towards the 50? And then we need to begin to define that. And so I think if we can, I'm gonna, and then obviously the second part there is that, you know, what other additional resources might be needed. We've talked about some of the things that we would provide on the front end, you know, sanitation stations on the inside. Outside, there'd be some tents with no cost. Maybe there's some things that we're missing. You know, Paul talked about the technology pieces, you know, to make it easier to do hybrid meetings. So we're thinking, but you all are actually, you know, the executors and the doers. So if there's something that we're missing, would like to hear about that. So I'm going to stop the screen so I can see all your wonderful faces. There you are. And then in that, we'll try it, because again, there's almost 48 of you now. If you have a comment or something like that, there should be a way to kind of raise your hand virtually on the and the little icons at the bottom or something like that. There should be a way to kind of raise your hand, and hopefully it'll, if you're not on my screen, it'll still signify it.
Okay, I have a question about SOC space. So I know for smaller RSOs, it's making sure to retain those SOC hours in order to keep their space. How will that work with like smaller RSOs in order to keep their space basically for like next year?
Brad, do you want to talk about the, I think the number of spaces that we're going to try to reduce to based on the number of applications that we've received?
Yeah, I think honestly for this year, our tracking isn't going to be as robust as in previous years. Number one, we have definitely seen a reduction in the amount of people vying for space. And we also have a smaller number of spots to offer. So with that, we've shifted in the past 2 years with the applications of really focusing on your rationale and the quality of your application to earn those spots. And once you've justified that, you know, we're taking you at your word and trusting you as RSOs to utilize that space wisely. Again, we are seeing the SOC will look drastically different in terms of spaces available because we do want to make it safer for this academic school year. So I wouldn't worry too much about hours. Again, if you are granted access and you receive a spot, then, you know, we trust you to do your part to use that wisely, follow number one, the pandemic guidelines, and then, you know, make good use of it for your organization. I hope that somewhat answered your question. I know that was kind of a roundabout answer.
Other folks with some comments or feedback?
To see if anyone has one. Someone did just in the Slido, they asked about career fairs and if career fairs, job fairs count as educational. Just so you know, the career fairs as they are currently planned both by Zhang and the Career and Student Employment Services, both of those are looking to do all of theirs online for at least the near future. So you can actually find they've got a number of them already planned. They're going to use a special platform that is designed specifically for things like career fairs to really make sure that you have the best experience and can connect with all those employers.
That then, if we went with one of the things that I'm thinking about, maybe you can ask a more specific question, is the what we've seen up to this point nationally is that when places have reopened, they reopen too quickly, and then they had to kind of slow things back down again. And so in that, would there be any strong hesitation or frustration if we started with the 10 for in-person and then got a sense to see how campus works, and then if things are going okay, move it up to 50? Or do we want to try to, or do you guys just trust us as the administrators to figure out, to define what an educational event would be?
Or 20 or some other one in between, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, it might be a different number too.
Yeah.
Just to trying to get a sense in terms of what you all are trying to do.
See a thumbs up, that's good. You could comment in the chat too.
Yeah, you can comment in the chat if you want to. But I think the thing for me is the worst part is, you know, all this work and energy, you know, organizationally and personally, as far as, you know, folks that have taken it serious of, you know, to catch, you know, the virus like within the first 3 weeks of school. Like nobody wants that. Nobody's wishing upon that. And so everybody obviously has a plan and an approach. But I think, again, if we can learn from previous other regional areas, the spots that have opened up quickly have sometimes had to slow back down. So that will be frustrating for us as a campus to have to, I'm not talking about sending everybody home and just, you know, just trying to get the policy part right. So Maria, you can see their comment in the chat there. And so I think in that, I don't want to hem and haw over it, but the whole analogy of if it looks like a duck. So if there's an outside presenter that's coming in, it's giving a formal presentation, like clearly that's educational. And so, you know, if the title of the event is a mixer, you know, maybe playing some games like card games, which those things are very important. So I'm not hating on that at all. But again, there's value and importance to that. But you know, a spades tournament per se or something like that is not necessarily an educational event. And so again, they're important, but then that's where that creativity part comes into in terms of how could we do, say, a spades tournament or euchre tournament or whatever, and you do that virtually. And there are some things that can work with that. So yeah, I think in that, Allison, looking at your comment there is, I think that's kind of where we're at is, again, yeah, we don't want to wish upon, you know, that there's going to be an outbreak, but in the event, I think it is good to have that backup. And so when we look back to Western in March, I think professors had about 4 days to kind of move everything online. And so this time we know now, I think it's November 20th. So right when Thanksgiving is over, then everything moves online for the rest of the semester. So that's a lot easier to plan for versus having 4 days to do that. So, so I think for you all in terms of planning events, if there's a lot of time and energy and planning that went into it, it's probably good to have a virtual backup just in case.
What I know our office is doing, we're planning all of our events essentially virtual first, and then if we can pivot them and do them in person, that's easier for us. We have to be more creative to try to say these in-person events, how do we do them online? How do we do it virtual? But then if it's in person, great, we know how to do that. We did that last year. So right now where you have the time and you're kind of starting events, think creatively, how does this look online? And then you might be able to find some version that's kind of a hybrid, where it's, even if it's in person, you might have had more than 10 or 50 people there. So you kind of do the online version, but then you can have a small crowd, a small group of people. So it's just different ways to think about things. This really is a time to kind of be creative, try new things, just because we don't know what works always. Some of you have already figured stuff out. Some of you pivoted faster than the university to having student organization meetings online, to keeping your events going. So, but I know our office, we are planning all of our stuff online first. And then if, you know, the week before it goes great, we can do it in person, we're going to pivot that way.
Any other feedback? Again, this isn't, obviously you had questions, we have some answers, but I really wanted to get some of your thoughts, ideas, feelings about, you know, maybe even hopefully if this information was helpful, you know, if we've missed the mark, please let us know so we can adjust and fix it. We can take it. So if there's things that like, this is ridiculous, please let us know. If we're close, then we're good. So. Yeah, Jeff, on the outdoor events and locations, I'll throw that part to Paul. Have you had any more conversations about like specific locations? Obviously, the flagpoles is one, but go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, guys, thanks for that question. Trying to figure out if we can erect some tents across campus to give us an option to do some outdoor events, you know, up to 100. They wouldn't be big enough for 100, but you could kind of spill out, I guess, because they're very expensive. But we're working with the campus. It takes a bit more than I thought it would to figure out where and how we can erect tents on campus. But we're looking at, I'd like to do a 40 by 40 tent on the concrete pad between Sangren and the new student center. So that would be a nice, you know, good place to have something like that. maybe throw some tables and chairs out there. Again, then we have to, of course, clean it and keep it safe. But and then we're looking at putting a tent over near Gilmore Theater, one on each of the satellite campuses, one at engineering, one at HHS, and one at aviation, which doesn't help as much for that. But so we're trying to figure out some ways to at least provide some outdoor spaces where you can spread a little bit. We're also going to put tents at each bus stop so that people aren't huddled under a little bus stop shuttle, just speaking to tents.
Well, I'll drop my email in here, and so if there are other ideas, thoughts, frustrations, anything, please, reach out, and we'll again try our best in this. So obviously, it's the first time for us, but again, it just felt like the right thing to do to try to include students into the conversation before things get set in stone, so or really set in stone. So.
I shot mine in there as well. So please feel free to reach out and send us emails.
Yeah,
that's a great way.
Jacoby has something. Yeah, Jacoby, I hear you on that. There's with the SOC in terms of how busy it is, it's pretty rare that it's not that busy. And so I think in that, that's one that we want to do, start out just a little bit more restrictively. I'm not around late at night, but we hear little rumors of things of, whether people are just studying, but sometimes later at night it can get a little bit busier as well. And so just being able to restrict it to start, and then if we can ease up from there, then we could go ahead and do that. But I appreciate that. You're right that the SOC pre-COVID wasn't extremely busy. We also know that the door gets propped open a lot, or folks are letting people in, and so we want to be careful about that too. So our next steps, and what is next? So we are. We already answered the communication part of it, so in ways that we would get that out. And so again, I really hope it's a partner thing of that. And so we're going to try as best as possible to reach out to you all. And so again, don't delete the emails, or try to keep up with us on social media or through RSO newsletter. Feel free to check different websites, stuff like that. So then after that, really, like I said, we're looking at guideline creation. So we're going to begin to really distill down and put some of that kind of pen to paper, so to speak. And then from there is process creation. So in that, there's guidelines, and which is the plan, but then the execution of said plan. And so in that, we want to make sure that if a form is put somewhere online, hypothetically, does it work, and different things like that. So we want to make sure the process is working. And then feedback, we want to be able to create, a feedback loop. And so if meetings like this work, maybe there's something that's more specific on like signature in terms of how do I make sure that my program is educationally purposeful or something like that. So signature would have some ideas, things like that. Specific meetings, with whether it be about sports clubs, Bernhardt Center, our office, or different things like that. So if these feedback sessions or meetings like that are productive for you, it's no sweat off our back to any of our offices, people from our teams being able to meet with you with their level of expertise. So but and again on that, this is great to see over 50 people show up. So if that's something that we continue to do, we can definitely keep that kind of going. So anything else from anybody on the host to add? Or
no, appreciate so much great feedback and enthusiasm. It's great to see all of you and hear from y'all. Can't wait to see you in person with mask on.
All right, well, I think that's it. So thanks again for coming out, and I really appreciate it. It warms my heart to see you as student leaders, really, and advisors too. Sorry, there's a couple of advisors in there. So hey, Chris and Jeff, so if there's others, it's really good to see you all. I know Dave Paul was on. I don't know if he still is. Really appreciate you all taking an interest in what we're trying to do and how we can move forward and keep this safe. So, yeah. All right. Well, I don't have an ending, so we'll just throw up a heart and we'll let y'all go. Yeah, that's right. Obama mic drop or whatever. So, all right. Thanks, everybody.